I will go ahead. Thank you, Shannon. I will go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:30 on the dot. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I would like to make, well, hold on. Let me do this the right way here. Let's start with public comments. Do I have any public comments? All right, I see none. So I will go ahead and move on. Additions or changes to the agenda. I do want to make one addition to the agenda, and I will do it right after, directly following this agenda item, and that is to welcome our new board member. So I will make that addition to the agenda. Does anybody else have any additions or changes to the agenda? Okay, perfect. So next agenda item, the one I just added, I would like to welcome Julia Lagrange to our Trails and Recreation Committee. She is taking the seat that was vacated by Allison Ferris. Julia had applied to join us the first time around, and unfortunately there just weren't enough seats, but that opened up and she's been super involved since then. So we're happy to have her join us now. So welcome, Julia. So Julia is one of the Dover resident reps for the Trails and Recreation Committee. Okay. And Julia, I know you've been following along pretty diligently, but if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Okay.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. Moving right along, I need a motion to approve the July 12th minutes. Sarah motions. Do I have a second? Kristen second. All in favor? Aye. Tommy, I think you have to abstain. But it doesn't matter. We have we got it anyway. We're good. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Town forest dedication update. So Andy, our town clerk, has a really close relationship with the family of Phil Bartlett, and he got right on working with them to get some words put together to commemorate Phil up there at the town forest. So we got some quotes on a plaque. Right now, it looks like that quote is going to be anywhere between $2,500 and $3,000 for an 18 by 24 bronze plaque. That plaque will be, it has a, kind of a carved, basically the picture from Phil's obituary, from his obituary will be on that plaque, along with all the words talking about, why it is that we've decided to name, part of the co-name the forest with Phil Bartlett. So that hopefully I'll put that in front of the board on Tuesday and hopefully get that ordered. We're about 8 weeks out on getting the actual bronze plaque, but the company that I think we're going to end up going with said that they would provide us with an aluminum version of the plaque in order for us to be able to move forward with like the dedication part. So we can do that before snow flies and kind of symbolically place it on the rock. And then once the actual bronze plaque shows up, we'll get that permanently affixed to the rock and then give the aluminum version of that plaque to the family of Phil, for helping us get all that together for Phil. We're still trying to find a company that's going to be able to do a nice carved sign for us. I think that's the route we want to go up there. We want to kind of keep the aesthetic of what the town forest is. We did have an option for, kind of like a metal road sign, and I just don't think that fits up there. I think we want to keep that rustic town forest look. So we will keep going on that and hopefully have that together soon as well, so we can have that up for when we go up to do the dedication. Mike, I do see you. Go ahead.
Yes. Did anybody investigate Dale Doucette? Somebody local for the carved wood sign? Just asking.
Shannon, can you write that down for me, or if you haven't already?
I already did. So we first reached out to Taylor from Dover Sign Shop, and he doesn't have availability until after the winter for a project like that. So I am contacting everybody else in the local area that's used, that our businesses have used. So that's where we're all headed next.
Yeah, I was just wondering, maybe we could call in a favor or something from Dale, but whatever. Yeah, good.
Well, no, I mean, we want to we would be, obviously paying him for his services. There's to get the,
Really do favors as a town, but.
No. Favors mean people just move you to the top of the list. They don't.
gotcha. I
get
got you.
paid.
Okay.
It's like when they say, do you have an electrician? I say, well, I'm not going to give you my favor guy, my favor guy.
Okay. Appreciate the idea, Mike, and we will make sure that Shannon said she's already reached out, so we'll definitely, we obviously try to go local as much as possible with all of these things. So, we don't really have a bronze plaque maker. Otherwise we would have been looking locally for that as well. Patricia, you had a question.
I feel like I heard the name Taylor from the sign person in Dover, and Dale Doucette is not in Dover, and I have a wonderful carved sign from him. So I'm wondering if there's two different people that everyone was talking about.
So Shannon had mentioned Taylor Wilkins, who runs Dover Sign Shop, and he does do beautiful carved signs. It's just that right now he is booked out until next year, and we're looking to have that sign up there, relatively quickly to coincide with being able to get now that the parking lot has been expanded, to get that dedication taken care of before the snow flies, so that all the people who come up to use that awesome property will get to see that, this winter and fall.
Oh, okay. I'm putting in a plug for Dale Doucette too, though.
Awesome. Yep, he's on the list. So we will keep reaching out. Okay. Any other questions there? And we'll give you a reminder, as we get a little closer, I'll definitely reach out and let you guys know when that's happening. Would love to see as many of you there as possible, since you helped to make it happen. I think it's going to be a great thing, and we'll get everybody involved. Okay. Any other questions there? Awesome. We are cooking right along. Just a super quick recap. So the select board, myself, SoVTA, representatives, it was Tommy and Tim from SoVTA, and Martina Barnes and Casey Merritt from the United States Forest Service, as well as a number of concerned public and individuals joined together last Tuesday, not last Tuesday, two Tuesdays ago, to take a walk around the Ridge Project property. I think it was a really positive experience to get everybody on the property together and kind of looking. I think it had been the first time that a lot of people had really been in there to look around. So I think, it kind of refreshed a lot of memories as to what it was that was originally talked about and what it looks like moving forward. So what came out of that meeting is, the Forest Service is looking to the town to definitely, at some point move forward with that parking lot. They're currently kind of talking it over to see when they think the best time to move forward with that parking lot would be. I think there's definitely a want on the town side to move forward, just because the timing works with, what's available for the road crew as well as the weather. But there are also some concerns about getting a parking lot there and opening the property up to people, prior to there being actual maintained trails implemented. So, obviously pros and cons on both sides of that there. But Casey and Martina were going to have a discussion about, basically weigh those pros and cons and see, what they thought about maybe even possibly, if not doing the whole parking lot, maybe doing a couple of spots just to get some spots off of the road, so that people who are coming there to do work on the property, whether it be to, to flag trails or trail designers, or once the ologists, as they call them, from the Forest Service start coming in and poking around, they are going to need a place to park, and Randy definitely didn't want that to be right on the side of Route 100. So we'll all just keep working together and talking together, to move that project forward. It's SoVTA and VIMBA will be putting together that RFP for the trails design portion of the project, and obviously happy to, Tim made it clear that they were happy to speak with the public and answer questions and things like that. So, if you have questions, I'm happy to, we can get those to Tommy and get answers, right? Tommy, you don't mind being a liaison for us there, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. I'm actually the chair for that project for SoVTA.
Yep.
So happy to get any answers.
So there you go. If you guys have questions, we can get those to Tommy and we can talk about them. Okay. So there are minutes from that meeting. We didn't record that meeting just because it was, a bunch of people walking through the woods and stopping every now and then, but there are pretty extensive minutes from the recordings I took. So you can go check those out. But again, just a real positive experience. I think it was great to have everybody out in the woods there and really look at what it is that we're all talking about. And, I think it helped to regenerate that excitement on the project, to realize that this is going to be a really awesome thing once we get it, to where it needs to be. So we're all very excited. Does anybody have any questions for me or Tommy or anybody? No. Okay. Easy group. It's going to be a quick one, guys. Well, knock on wood, right? Okay. So no questions on the Ridge project. We'll keep you updated on anything we have there. All right. We are ahead of schedule here. Trip, can you hear us? I think you're frozen. Or you have a very interesting picture. Am I frozen? No. I see people moving. There we go.
Looks
Trip?
like he's on mute.
Let's see.
It's the Eastover internet.
Didn't realize Thursday at 6:30 was peak in Eastover. Patricia.
While we're waiting, is there any news on the map out of the disc trail on Horace Hill until Trip comes online?
No, so we're going to be having a discussion. So my office and the director of SOVTA, as well as Jeremy from the church, back when we did the VOREC grant, we put together a map and all those parties involved. So what we're going to do before we move forward, I have RFPs put together on that. And before we move forward on that, we're just going to have a conversation, between the select board and SOVTA and my department to say, like, okay, here's what those roles and responsibilities are on Horace Hill, so that when we send that RFP, everybody knows kind of what we're doing moving forward. So I think that's an important conversation to have, and we'll have that and get those RFPs out. Mike Purcell, you had a question. You're
No, it was
muted.
more of a statement that I asked Eric to make sure that when he sent out the RFPs, that they included that loop component to the Valley Trail, hiking trail, something that was not shown on the SOVT plan, because clearly, part of the Horace Hill program or reason for buying it was not only, groovy stuff above the trail, but also a loop that people could walk to the sawmill. So I've asked Eric to at least include that in the RFP so that component will be implemented for everybody's use, not just bikers, discers, and whoever.
Yeah, so that will definitely be added to the RFP. It was not part of the original map that Steve put on the paper for us, just because it wasn't a part of that VOREC grant. I know we can throw our hands up about it, but it wasn't. So we'll get it. It's on there now. We'll have that on there and make sure that it's included in the trail building portion, of the RFP, because if that's what was originally part of the plan, then we want to make sure that it's included. But we just, we want to try to get that one moving forward, because this is something, obviously, we've talked a lot about it, and I think it took us a long time to get to a point where everybody was pretty happy with the way it all kind of came together and looked. So I'd like to, now that we are at that point, I'd like to get things moving forward, as we can. We do have money in the budget set aside for that project. We just need to get those RFPs out and make sure we're following the process. Kristen, you had a question.
Yeah, just to confirm. So we're talking, Mike, you're talking about another trail entrance on Crosstown Road, like across from the sawmill?
It's not really across from the sawmill. I talked to Andy, about the Cemetery Association, because there's a road there next to you know, what I call the old ash house, where I used to first lived when I moved here, I don't know, 40 plus years ago. But ultimately we can't really use that driveway, but there's a stone wall. And so we'd be on the other side of it. So ultimately we're just upslope from the sawmill a tiny bit, rather than further up the hill by the old roadway that comes beneath Tara. The
Okay,
idea is, yeah, the idea being, if I'm lower, you know, older people will not shy away from walking up the hill slightly from the sawmill. And they could just go round and round instead of back and forth.
Okay. All right. So I don't want to dive too much further in on this until, like I said, we got to have a conversation, you know, with SOVTA to make sure that we're all moving forward in the same direction there. I think that's important, and we'll get that out. You know, as part of that process, you know, Steve had also helped us submit to Act 250 on those, and those came back. You know, we do have approval. They are looking for, you know, once we do get a final design, they're going to want that reviewed by state wetland. But, you know, Steve definitely, you know, in our conversations when Steve and I and Jeremy were out there, and when I was out there with Steve and the Trail Builder Company, you know, those things were definitely taken into consideration as we put that design together, so that we weren't going to run into a problem where the proposed design we were putting out there wasn't one that was going to, you know, be hindered by the wetland. Steve's very, very competent when it comes to working around those types of situations. So, you know, he definitely, that lower portion of it, when he put it on the map, definitely avoided that wetland section. So we're all set as far as Act 250 is concerned. Once we get the final trail design through the RFP, we would obviously run that through wetlands and make sure we're good there, obviously, before we put any shovels in the ground. But this wasn't on the agenda, so I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, just because if somebody wanted to be a part of the conversation, I don't want them to miss it. So we can, if you want, we can put that onto another agenda and move it forward then. Trip is still, oh, he's here. Trip, can you hear us? You're muted if you're there. Oh, there he is.
I'm here.
Okay. All right. So Trip, thank you for joining us. Trip sent us all the information that he had updated in terms of phases and all of those things. Questions, concerns, all the things. Anybody? We did, for anybody who wasn't able to join us the other day, we did make a site visit on the property, and Trip walked us around to point out, you know, kind of where things were laid out on the property. You know, as you can kind of tell from that map, but I think, you know, once you're on the property, it's a lot easier to understand as well. So even if you weren't available for that, you know, stop in there sometime and take a look. And based on the map that Trip gave us, you should get a pretty good idea. Trip, I will say there was a concern from our police chief about the distance between the furthest volleyball courts, or the closest volleyball courts to the road. You know, I know 30 feet seems like a decent amount of distance, but it gets a lot closer than you think. And I understand, you know, we'd have the split rail fence and potentially some, you know, wire mesh like the one in the park, but I think he still had a concern that, you know, he's played volleyball down at the Sitzmark and things like that, and has seen those balls travel a pretty decent distance. So he did have some concerns there that may need to be addressed at some point. Sarah?
A couple of things. One is anybody who was at the site visit and asked questions or got into any conversation about things, just remember that some of the people here didn't hear any of that. So if there's anything you want to make sure is brought to the group as a whole, even though you already know it, basically re-ask those questions to Trip so that it gets into the formal record. And the other thing is, Eric, I had a conversation with Randy as well about that, but I think that we perhaps should be looking at Trip's project from a more of a conceptual level than as a hardcore, this is how the design will go.
Yep.
Because we know we're going to need to bring in engineering, we're going to need to have some sign off from various entities, and that may be the siting of the volleyball courts and or fencing regarding them may be something that gets put into the plan at a later date.
Right.
So I think if we all look at the plan, what was drawn as the concept for what we want to accomplish, as long as we understand that we are also answering to forces beyond ourselves, like the state
Yeah.
and
250, the
FEMA
state,
and all these
DOT.
people who may have their own particular, I know that Tripp spoke to some Act 250, the Act 250 issue,
yeah.
but that's not necessarily, that doesn't necessarily mean we aren't going to end up having to answer to them too.
Correct. Yeah, he
So-
dropped some stuff off to our local 250 rep
Right.
in the Springfield office, and there's obviously a lot of work that'll need to be done from there. So Tripp's gone again.
Must be a hot night in Eastover, huh?
I think so. We can ask questions, I guess, and I can answer them based on what I know from the trip, if that works for everybody. And then if I don't have specific answers, we can ask Tripp when he returns. Kristen, you had a question.
Eric, I had asked about hydration and you said, bring that up again in Thursday night's meeting. So I'm asking about, there's an active well on the property and.
So
We've thought about
the
that.
reason I didn't want to have this conversation there is because we weren't on the record, and I would like this to be on the record, is that because we would be leasing the property, there is a lot of gray area over who would be responsible for the safety of said well. There's a lot of issues within the town of Dover with contaminants, in well water and things like that. And we're finding more of those problems as the state decreases the tolerance for those contaminants in our wells. I think a lot of the associations are finding out about that pretty quick. So I think the idea of us becoming responsible for a well that's been sitting, somewhat dormant for a while is not something that would be super high on our list. I mean, I absolutely understand the need for hydration while you're sportsing and whatnot, but I would definitely be leery of hopping into a situation where we were saying that, go ahead, this water's safe to drink, because then we're on the hook for testing that water and making sure that it's continually safe to drink. Kristen, I'll get right back to you. Mike first.
By the way, I'm back. I'm sorry.
I got you, Tripp. Hang on. Thank you for coming back. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think people should be individually responsible for their own hydration. And, part of the deal is they can just get hydrating supplies that they like at any number of the businesses that are nearby.
Non-alcoholic supplies.
No, not alcoholic, but 7-Eleven,
I said
Tony's.
non-alcoholic.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, right. But I'm just saying, when you go to, it's not like they're in the middle of the desert. There's plenty of places that would be happy to sell them some water if they haven't brought their own.
Correct. Kristen, go ahead.
My only comment to that was I was hoping for a more environmentally, just being more environmentally conscious than selling water bottles and then having water bottles like all over the park or whatever.
No, I
Not a
do.
fan of water bottles.
I understand and I agree, and I appreciate the sentiment, to think about it in that manner. It's just that I don't know that that's a liability, on top of all the other expenses for the park, that like the constant maintenance and testing of a well on the property is probably not a liability that the town would want to take on. If it was part of the lease to have the landowner test that well on a regular basis, then that's one thing, but I don't think that's something the town, and I'm not the select board, I could be off base here, but I don't believe it's something the town is going to want to sign on to be liable for. Hold on one second, Mike. I had Patricia.
Right, looking for the cursor. That does seem like, now that I've heard that, one of the later phases. But is there going to be a non-alcohol? There's going to be a non-alcohol thing here, right?
I think if the
For
property,
liability.
in my head, even though we're leasing the property would be run the same as our town park is, where there's, a non-open container policy. There's really no other park, public or private, that, you can kind of just stroll around and drink in. So I think it would be an alcohol-free space. I mean, if we're inviting families and people who are looking to recreate and play sports, that's not, we don't need people drunk, playing cornhole in the
Yeah,
park.
no, I was
No.
just making sure that that was gonna be part of the,
Yeah, there's plenty of properties in Dover to do the drinking and cornholing, but I don't see this being one of those. I think we would try to limit the alcohol, or get rid of the alcohol on the property. Again, I'm not the select board. I'm just voicing what I'm guessing would be their thoughts on it. Okay, Mike, go ahead.
No, I'm all about the environmental sort of thing, not buying water and bottles and plastic. It's just that if I go somewhere, being sports boy, I bring my stuff, and I bring my water, and I, buying bottle is a last resort, but at least, you could do that versus if we were talking about a recreation center at the top of White's Road, where it'd take you, miles of driving in a car to buy water that you forgot to bring. So, but I'm still of the opinion that we don't need to get into that business right away. I mean, we're just talking about stepping up or asking the select board to step up and man a temporary portable trailer to dish out horseshoes, much less a water, program. But anyway,
Yeah, and I think it's, there are possibilities down the line. I mean, I know the state has some programs to provide drinking water and things like that in public spaces. So those are absolutely things we can look into. I just think, as far as the well sits right now, again, unless, there was some agreement with the landowner to kind of manage that piece of it, I don't know that it's a liability that we would want to, be on the hook for, at least right now. Okay. Does anybody else have questions that were asked the other day that they would like to ask again in the public setting? Or anyone who wasn't there have questions or anything of that nature? I want to try to make sure we get everything out tonight.
So Eric, I don't know if you guys can hear me or not.
Yes, go ahead, Trip.
So when I cut out, you guys were talking about the amount of space between the volleyball court and Route 100. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Sarah chimed in and said that for the sake of talking about the project, that we would be discussing it as it's laid out. Obviously, the actual layout would need to go through engineering and whatnot anyway at some point. So this is a discussion that would be had later on, not necessarily while we're talking about whether or not we like the concept of the project. Okay.
So to be clear, I've done a couple alternative mappings for the volleyball that would be, if you can picture it, 3 long, okay, but further away from the road, and then 1 over closer to the, we'll say, tennis pickleball area.
Okay.
So that would move it over. So there are options along around the placement of the volleyball courts.
Awesome. Thank you for the clarification. Matt, you had a question.
Yeah, so my only concern, which relates to the volleyball court placement too, actually, is we do have a snowmobile trail. You probably know that goes through there to get to the OMT property and TC's restaurant. And I just want to make sure there would be enough room for us to continue going through that way. I don't know how.
So I'll address that too. And I think it wasn't Sarah that asked that, or
Paul Fisher.
So all the volleyball courts are going to have sleeves set in the ground that are going to be at grass level, and the poles that go in will slide in and out of those. And once our season is over, those will come out, and the poles will be underground, so that won't be an issue at all.
Okay, that's great. And the other thing is the split rail fence.
Yep.
People park in that area and then walk across to TC's. So I don't know if we could have a small opening in the fence, whether it's temporary or permanent for the winter, to pull some rails out or whatever.
Yes. So you're talking about if they're in the park itself, as opposed to walking up to the parking lot, and walking out, you want them to go directly across to TC's?
Yeah, I think that's where most of the people, I mean, most of the people probably that were riding to TC's were parking across the street in the park area and then walking like 90 degrees across Route 100.
Okay, so at this point in time, right now, they do park right in that park area and then walk across. My suggestion longer term, and I've had this conversation with Randy, is eventually to have a walkway at TC's. And, you know, to take it a step further, if we get that much traffic in the winter and the other maybe, and again, I've had these conversations with Randy, that we talk about a slower zone for that area.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not a huge snowmobile traffic down there right now. We're hoping to improve our trail to change that, but
Yeah, and the reality is right now, if it wasn't for the snowmobiling thing, they could easily walk to the OMT parking lot and go across, like a lot of people do park in the OMT parking lot and go to TC's when TC's parking lot is filled.
yeah. Yeah, I think we'll be able to work with this I don't think it'll be much of an impediment to our trail, just making sure that it's been brought up and keeping it in mind.
So I knew those trails were there, and that's one of the reasons I designed it like this. The only games that are on that pathway are 2 lawn games that will obviously go away. And
Yeah.
the volleyball courts will have sleeves so that we can put adjustable poles in there for different types of games, and they'll go away again at the end of the season.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Other questions, concerns, clarifications? Mike Purcell.
Are we moving to a point where the group can vote to just recommend to the select board that they consider moving forward on this?
I think if we're at a point where there are no further questions or clarifications sought, then I think that's where we are. So I just want to confirm, make a last call for any. Julie, are you raising your hand? There you go.
I am. Oh, my hand was too high. Wow. I just had one follow-up question. First, I'll repeat one of the questions that I asked there.
Yeah.
And that was about the surfaces and whether there needed to be, the tennis court surfaces and the pickleball surfaces and the basketball surfaces, did they need to be removed in the, after the season? And I think, Trip, we had also discussed the pump track, that it's a, what do you call it? It's not a permanent structure, right?
Right.
I just wanted to point that out. And then I had a follow-up question, which is what kind of regular maintenance will be required both in season and out of season?
Mm-hmm.
Have we thought about that?
Absolutely. I started first by talking to Dave Smith, who was, I don't know if all of you know Dave, but he's our maintenance guy in the town and handles all the properties from the mowing to, he takes care of the trails now and all that stuff. And then I talked to Travis, who's our roads guy. And quite honestly, the reality is that they are flat out and they can't handle any more of the work. And secondly, the suggestion on the Weston and Sampson report was that we have a supervisor that oversees the maintaining of the trails and this. I asked Dave approximately how much time, and he came over the site with me, and Travis did too, how much time it would take to mow, weed whack, et cetera, and he said between 2.5 and 3 hours. That would have to be done, especially in the springtime and some in the summer. I mean, I'm not mowing my lawn as many of you aren't right now, as much as we did in the spring, because we're in a drought, but at least once every week to 10 days. And that would be the responsibility of the staff of the recreation department. We have plenty of equipment from the town to use, but Dave can't maintain that. But absolutely, there's got to be a maintenance schedule. And again, the supervisor overseeing the staff would have to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, and I don't think we can't assume that we're going to be able to use any of those pieces of equipment right now. Right. I mean, we have no.
So with my conversation with Dave and Travis, they said There's no need to buy new equipment. We use some of this stuff once every week and a half, 10 days. So a schedule could be set where you could use it.
Okay. Julia, was that it on your question? Do you have another one?
Second part of the question, though, I also was thinking about the, the court surfaces may deteriorate, particularly that special surface that's on the basketball, and or sand for the volleyball, that type of annual or, every couple of years. Do we have any ideas about?
Yep. So, again, I've spent extensive time and I have a background in tennis, as most of you know. The reason I chose the court surface for the basketball tennis is that is literally maintenance free. It does not need to come up. And again, for those of you who want to take a look at a court that's been there for 7 years, go to Brookbound in Wilmington and look at that. So that doesn't come up. It's maintenance free and blah, blah, blah. The pickleball surface, after a lot of talking to a bunch of different contractors, the best I can tell you is every 5 to 7 years, we may need to resurface that. It doesn't come up. It's a surface that is laid on top of asphalt. And depending on, the wear and tear of the courts, they may have to resurface that. And that's, going to be close to $18,000 to do that. Well, less than that because they don't have to do the lawn. So, but that is at neither of those surfaces. I also contacted the pump track people, and they said their courts are weatherproof. However, they're out of Missouri. I'm not sure how familiar they are with Vermont. But they also sell covers for the pump tracks. So go ahead, Mike.
No, hold on. Sarah Shippey first, please.
Sorry.
And just as a point of order, the only person who can call on people is Eric, because
Yeah.
he's the chair of the meeting. I would encourage you, Trip, if we decide to vote this forward to the select board, that you come in prepared with a estimated budget for maintenance. You're going to need to show that to the select board. You can't just, the numbers can't be thrown out in the meeting. So I would encourage you to have, like year 1, year 2, year 7, year 8, whatever, and have that very clearly delineated, which things are going to need maintenance, what that maintenance in today's dollars costs.
Okay.
And replacement costs on some of these items. We can't expect, some of these lawn game things to last forever.
Yeah.
So normal expected loss and replacement costs for those as well.
So Sarah, give me just an idea. Let's just take cornhole, for example.
Mhm.
Let's say I expect these things to last 5 years.
Mhm.
So do you want me to take it game by game and give you a ballpark on, life expectancy and what the cost will be down the road?
I think
think-
what's important is to, I'm sorry, Eric. I'm
I
also speaking
was-
kind of as select board person too.
Yeah. No, what I'm thinking, Trip, is get that laid out, to a point where it's like, okay, here's the entire cycle of maintenance. Okay, so is that 10 years? So within that 10 years, we've bought another cornhole set, we've resurfaced, we've done these things. So whenever that process would start over again, so like every 10 years or so, expect to spend this much on maintenance, or whatever the number is.
Yeah,
Expect to
and
spend
I
this
hear what
much
you're
on
saying, but to Sarah's point, there are certain games that we're not gonna have to replace.
Yeah.
And there are certain games that are gonna last forever.
Right, so we just wouldn't put those in that estimate, right? So that would just be the one-time cost. What Sarah was looking for was an estimate on games we will have to replace. Okay, and there are incidentals, right? So we put out a story walk, or we worked with the library to put out a story walk that made it, a week and a half before somebody decided to smash it
Right.
in a very public setting. So we have to take into account that people are not always awesome, and people don't always want to take care of things the way that we want them to. So
be
I
clear-
think that's what Sarah was getting at. Hold
To
on
be
one
clear,
second.
I put up those story walks. I know.
Okay, Sarah, go ahead.
What I was going to say is what I'm suggesting that would be helpful to your proposal to the select board is to
Yeah.
delineate a year by year. I agree with Eric that, at some point you're going to hit the point where you're repeating the entire cycle. But
Right.
within that cycle, you may have purchased,
Yeah.
you know, nets 3 times,
Yeah.
maybe. But so to be able to say, and to delineate, so year 1, we expect it to be this, year 2. And I think to Eric's point, I think we should expect there's going to be a certain amount of vandalism. I think we should anticipate that and budget for it. It's going to happen. People are not going to be nice people all the time. And even if we put up trail cams, all that does is catch them after they've done it. It doesn't stop them from doing it in the first place.
Can the insurance guy come put on his insurance hat? So if there's vandalism, for instance, the pickleball courts,
Mhm.
the town's policy covers vandalism. There's no deductible. And it should replace and repair that stuff. Now, if it doesn't, I'll take a closer look at the policy, but that's it. But then we have a deductible, probably starting at $5,000 or $10,000. So it would have to be major damage to have nothing there. But if somebody steals a cornhole game, you're right, we're gonna have to replace it.
Sarah Shippey and then Patricia.
So my point is simply to have those answers written down and presented to the select board, not just to have them,
What's
you're
that?
answering the questions on the fly, as it were. Address them in writing so that the select board has an opportunity to look at all of this before, again, assuming we vote it forward tonight, has the opportunity to look at all of this information before, and then they can develop possibly future further questions.
Yep.
But if you know the answer to the insurance thing, then have that written down.
So Sarah, what I'd appreciate is if all of you could think of questions like you're posing, which are great questions, so I can have them addressed before the meeting.
Well, that's the point of tonight.
Yeah, I think that's what we're getting out of the way here. So the recording will be available on this trip, so you can
Yeah.
go back anything you might have missed or didn't get a chance to write
Good.
down. Mike Purcell. Oh, sorry, no, hold on. I have
Patricia.
Patricia. I have Patricia first and then Mike Purcell.
I guess the whole point of this, though, like when we were there the other day, is going through phases and having it be presented as a whole, but in phases. So it would, all the surfacing and everything. So I guess now the maintenance needs to be proposed with that, but it would be in phases, as opposed to like, taking a bite off whatever the phase is and or thing. Anyway, my other question is that when we were going through everything the other day, and everyone pointed out all the rock walls and how I misunderstood as to whether they're going to be taken down and made into like a rolling grass rockway, or if it seemed like by the pickleball area, there might be a little fence. Are the rock walls going to be rebuilt, which is, little rock walls are kind of a Vermont thing to make them safe. And I guess my second one was in the middle part, in between the volleyball and the tennis, basketball, pump track, just saving as many of the trees there that weren't disturbed, which it looked like you were going to do that and get rid of the brush, but there's also a rock wall in there. Preserving that or making that into rock benches or just making it good. I guess that's it.
Tripp, go ahead, and then I'll get to you, Mike.
So Patricia, really good questions. And I'm going to answer it like this. Obviously, safety comes first. So we would never have the walls that aren't safe. When I originally walked the property with Rich Kaplan and other people that were interested parties and floated different ideas of what to do with the changes of altitude, everybody, like you said, agreed Vermont rock walls are, kind of character built and they could be nice. So my goal at this point in time, and it really shouldn't have a determining factor in this or the select board, is to have a group that works on landscape and beautification, et cetera, to make that determination after the fact, because I'm not gonna tell you right now, we're gonna do this and have it be the wrong thing. I think it's something that a group of people, and I'm hoping if and when it gets by the select board, we have a select board member on several committees to make that determination. My thought, quite honestly, is make sure A, it's safe, B, we can make it nice, and the trees you're talking about, yes, in that corner, Patricia, we would like to use some of those trees as shade trees and have a nice area, but overall, I think safety first and aesthetics second, and I shouldn't be the one at this point in the stage to tell you what we're gonna do. I'd like to hopefully have people much more qualified than me, have interest in this, volunteer their time, make decisions, and we can move on as, as people think we should.
Yeah, the engineers may have some input on that as well as they're looking at all of these things to say like absolutely not, or yes, we can do that, or things like that. So that I think is all input that we can be providing along the way, as it's implemented, but valid questions. Go ahead, Mike Purcell.
Yeah, I think exactly. This is conceptual at best, because it's certainly to be modified by anybody from the police chief to whatever ologist comes and looks. And I think it sounds like Tripp's camp, is prepared to work in that regard. But to Sarah's point, it's better to have some of these numbers for the select board rather than be ambushed and have a response that says, I don't know how long the whatever thing will last, or no, we're planning on, 5 years for the pickleball or whatever. My other question before that had to do with PBS did this tremendous series on the people that play paddleball, these old guys that play paddleball all year long. They play right through the winter. I'm not sure who, they're in Dorset, so maybe it's, a lot warmer than Dover, but there could be a couple of zealots out there that want to use those pickleball courts,
Okay.
Eric, can I address that quickly?
Very quickly, yes.
Yeah, so paddleball is a totally different game. It's inside a cage, and I played all winter. I've played in the Nationals 4 times in paddleball, but it is a different game, and you can't play it on pickleball courts. Just to throw that out.
Perfect. Okay, so barring any large questions, are we ready at this point to make a motion to recommend to the select board to approve the recreation area project as presented?
I recommend, I first did.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Wait, was there a question or what are we doing here? Okay, Sarah Shippey has a question.
What I would like to suggest to whoever makes the motion is that the motion be that we were passing this forward to the select board as a conceptual idea, subject to input from whatever experts the select board feels would be appropriate to contact.
Okay. Okay. So do I have a motion?
I
Patricia,
motion that, but I don't know if I can repeat what she just said.
It was recorded, so you could just say,
What
I think Shannon may have gotten it.
yeah.
what Sarah said. I motion.
Hold on, I think maybe it was this, to make a recommendation to the select board to approve the recreation area project as presented with
Conceptually,
Conceptual with recommendations from whatever engineers or
professionals.
Whatever
professional.
professionals or experts the select board
As
deems appropriate to
presented,
contact.
any appropriate
Professionals deem.
professional.
Sorry,
All right, Shannon.
got lost.
I tried to get ahead of it, but I didn't.
Does that work as me saying it, or
Yeah.
should have written it down?
So Shannon is writing it down.
Yeah, make a recommendation to the select board to approve the recreation area project conceptually as presented with any appropriate professional input. Does that sound right? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's your motion, Patricia, so you don't have to say it anymore.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I have a second? Mike seconds. Sorry, Julia, Mike beat you to it. Mike seconds. All in favor? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Matt, is that a hand raised to say
Yes, I
yes?
think he's saying yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, I'm pretty sure we can get it on the agenda for Tuesday, but please keep an eye on the agenda. I'm gonna try to get it on for Tuesday. It depends
It's
on what's been
full.
added. It's full. Okay. So Trip, you had said that it wouldn't be too big of an issue for this to be on for the first meeting in September, right? I
Well, to
believe
be
so.
honest with you, especially with some of the stuff Sarah said today, I'd like to have the more time.
Okay, so
So-
why don't we plan on presenting this to the select board on September 6th? I will get that onto that agenda. And Trip, you work on the stuff that Sarah and everybody else had kind of raised to you. I would, in working with the select board on a regular basis, I will echo what Sarah said and just, make sure you have as much information prepared as possible, because you never know, what kind of information or questions they'll be asking. Sarah, you had a question.
I was just going to say, keep an eye on the September 6th agenda. I think that's already starting to fill up as overflow from the next one.
Okay,
So we're going to want to get on there sooner than later.
I will let Jeanette know
Right.
right now.
And I just want to say formally, I abstained from voting on this only because I sit on the select board and my voice is going to get weighed in there. So I didn't think it was really appropriate for me to vote twice.
So I'm going to ask all of you if I can call on you for help during this process, trying to put things together. Everybody's input is important. I've been a one-man band, looking for help from individuals, and everybody's in favor, but I'd like to go with my best foot forward in front of the select board. So everybody, and Sarah, including yourself, if I have questions, I hope I can reach out to you.
Mhm.
And anybody that has input, please reach out to me.
All right, thank you, everybody. That was a good conversation. So we've cut deeply into our conversation, the last agenda item here. Where did we leave the conversation on Hathaway Trail when we wrapped up last time? Mike, do you remember what we were talking about?
So you had me give a proposal on putting up 7 gates in 7 different spots. And I
Yeah.
think I gave you a quote of $500 a gate, and that's where we left it.
Okay. So from here then, do we want to make, does the group want to make a recommendation to the select board that we have those 7 gates installed on Hathaway Trail to be used later to close the trail? Mike Purcell.
I would make a motion that we seek to employ the good graces and efforts of the Snowmobile Club to install those gates to protect and eliminate further degradation of these Class 4 trails from irresponsible users for the season.
Can I have a second? Shannon, I see Patricia second. Shannon, you had your hand up.
I know, I just really wanted a more condensed motion, but it's not my motion to make, so it's okay.
Mike, can we tidy that up a little bit for Shannon? Just for
It's
words'
fine.
sake?
Certainly,
wasn't-
I would make a motion to install gates to protect town resources
Well,
on the various trails.
Somewhere in the middle.
I wasn't seconding. I was asking, I wanted to ask
Okay.
one more question.
Yeah, so there will be a question period, so just hang on. That happens after the second on the motion.
I'm sorry, I just need a question because I wasn't prepared for this in my head. What we're really, your goal is we want to recommend the select board approve the purchase and installation.
Of the
Mhm.
7 gates by the stump jumpers.
Okay,
There you go.
thank you.
That's exactly what I said in different words.
So do I have a second on that motion? And then I will open it up. Kristen seconds. Patricia, question.
I just wanted to know if the gates were able to be opened or if they're just like permanent gates, because I had hiked up there and they're just,
So a permanent gate is actually a fence, right? So we're talking gates that would open and be able to be open, at different times of the year, because a lot of what we're talking about is things, and Mike, if I'm speaking out of line here, but it's trails that the snowmobile club uses in the winter, correct?
Correct. So
Thank
they
you.
would be, right, there's certain gates that would be open for snowmobile use in the winter time. And then there are other gates that you guys can decide if you ever want them open or just permanently closed, that people could walk around.
Now, keep in mind, guys, that we can make this recommendation to the select board. They may want to
Mhm.
look into, because this is a legal town trail, we do have the right to create an ordinance. Okay, the select board would create an ordinance about the closure of legal town trails. From there, the select board would then make a policy specific to Hathaway Trail, and that's where we would make the rules that said the gates are opened at this time, or these gates remain closed, or whatever the policy is. The select board may decide we don't want to order and install those gates until we have that ordinance figured out and in place. So we can make this recommendation to them that we purchase the gates and have the stump jumpers install them, but just know that they may have some reservations about ordering them if we don't first have, and getting them put in if we don't have those ordinances and policies in place to take care of the legal side of it. Okay, Mike Purcell first.
I guess my question would have been, with regards to the gates, like at Hogback, where we try to provide keys or different locks so that emergency personnel can just go up there and unlock the chain, in addition to National Grid or whoever else. So
There are property owners there as well.
Exactly. And so something to allow those people to use it because they're the ones that have the rights. Yeah. So some provision for that should be made. But that's the stump jumpers kind of when they install it, if that's accepted, they can allow for the homeowners to install or property owners to install a different lock, the rescue people a different lock, but they don't need to call the stump jumpers and say, I can't find my
Sarah, I
garbage,
see you.
rescue this guy,
Okay, Mike, thank you. Sarah, I see you. Patricia first and then Sarah.
I guess mine was overall, it really doesn't pertain to the gates. It pertains to ordinances. Like when I lived in Colorado, they could close down mountain bike trails in the spring. And
So that would be part of the policy under the ordinance. So the policy would be specific to Hathaway Trail, and it would live under the ordinance that gives the select board the power to close that legal town trail when it sees fit. Sarah, you had your hand up.
Yes, the process of writing an ordinance takes at minimum 45 days, and there's a public comment period. So all of this information would be relevant when we get to the, if and when we decide to write the ordinance, there's going to be plenty of opportunity for us to say, well, what about this and what about that? And have the select board, put that down, Michael. No hitting the screen. To consider all of that. And I don't, Mike, I have to say, I don't agree with the idea of multiple locks. I agree with one lock with multiple keys. Because, you know, I put my lock over your lock and then you can't use your lock because my lock, you know what I'm, so, and you can order, I mean, there's plenty, or there could be a code system, I don't know, but that's not something we need to decide tonight. Right now, all we're saying is we want to request that the select board consider this. And then the details of how this gets done will be the, you know, the stump jumpers will come to the select board to explain how they would proceed, and all those conversations will be had at the select board level.
Okay. So we have our motion and our second. Are there any other questions? Perfect, because it's 7:30. All in favor?
Actually, no, I'm abstaining.
Sarah, you're abstaining, correct?
I'm
You're-
abstaining, right?
Okay, so everyone is in favor. Sarah abstains. She is not a nay.
I'm not gonna vote twice.
Right. Okay, so that being said, we will get that on the agenda probably for the 6th as well, okay? And Shannon is going to remind me to do that because I don't have my notepad next to me and I did not write that down, so.
Not award winning.
Not award-winning behavior. The next meeting is in September on Tuesday, the 13th. I think I even got that right on the first shot. Second Tuesday in September, the 13th, we will meet at 6:30 regular time. If you'd like to see anything on that agenda, I need it by the week before, just because we typically have this agenda out Friday morning. So, you know, Thursday at the latest would be great, so we can have it on the go out on the agenda. Okay. Any other questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to me directly. Other than that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Tricia makes a motion, Sarah seconds, and I will see you all next month. Thank you.